I'm Jeff Balke along with Mike Stanton as always. Welcome back. We were just, it got me laughing because he mentioned Sergeant Hulka from Stripes, one of my all time favorite comedy movies. And so
And
now
you are our big toe.
that's
Where
right.
where you lead us
Newest,
and how good this podcast is directly upon your shoulders.
I'm gonna use another Sergeant Hulka.
I have nothing to do with it.
I'm getting too old for this show. Yeah. Oh my God, one of my all-time favorite comedies. All right,
Oh yeah.
so thanks for joining us, everybody. We are live both on YouTube as well as on X. If you want to join in, you can chat with us during the podcast as well. Obviously, this will be on YouTube and you probably might be listening to this on the podcast later. So either way, if you're watching, I'm wearing my Corpus Christi Hooks jersey here.
Look at you.
By the way, this jersey was acquired from me by my brother-in-law, Eric, who lives in Austin, and Eric is a very frugal gentleman. He's just retired, a radiologist for many years.
Okay.
And great guy, but he loves finding a bargain. And so he and his wife like to go to the thrift stores all the time on the regular. And this was a thrift store find.
Very
that
nice.
He found me.
Very
So
nice. I am wearing my just got off my mountain bike, trying to get my big butt back in shape shirt.
Nice. I rode my bike 25 miles today.
Did you really?
Today.
I didn't go that far.
I
mountain bike, so I don't get the get the miles.
Yeah, I don't get. I have my mountain bike. I need to bust that out. Have you for those of you who do mountain bike? Have you ever gone to the ant hills over off I-10? There's a park over there, and it always escapes me the name of this park. But in the park, there are all of these. It's right along Buffalo Bayou, out of I-10, kind of in the energy corridor, out that direction, near the Beltway. Yeah, near the Beltway. And there are a bunch of man-made BMX
dirt
bike
mounds?
trails. Yes, all along Buffalo Bayou for miles.
Really?
And they're fantastic. Some of the best. And they've just been preserved by the people who ride on them.
Yeah. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that does sound intriguing. Probably not going to happen in the middle of summer.
Oh, at least it's shaded. At least it's shaded. But yeah, if you're going to do it in summer,
it's still Houston heat. This is not a dry heat.
You better get out there early in the morning. All right, so let's talk some Astros. I think the first thing that we got to talk about right off the bat is Forrest Whitley. He was DFA'd over the weekend, which basically means that if the Astros do not trade him this week, he will be cleared. He has to go through waivers. If he clears waivers, he'll be outrighted to Sugarland. It's likely, I would think, that one team out of 29 is probably going to pick up him, but they do have to put him on their 40-man roster.
Right. If they do pick him up, actually, I think they have to put him on the 25-man roster or 26-man roster.
You're correct.
So they have to put him in the big leagues. This is the rules have changed because there used to be a couple different types of waivers. There was revocable waivers and there was irrevocable waivers, and the team had to decide before you put the player on which waiver wire they were going to go on.
Oh,
and if you were irrevocable waivers, that means they were trying to release you. Okay, they were going to let you go.
Right.
I don't know. I can't pull up the rules right here in front of me, but it sounds like the Astros have the option that once he clears waivers, which means no one picks him up and no one's going to put him on their 26-man roster, then they have the option to either send him down, send him to AAA, which he has no choice but to take because he doesn't have 3 years in the big leagues.
That's right.
Or they can just outright release him.
That's right.
I don't know which they're going to do. I know this has been a long and bumpy road for the Astros and for Forrest. A lot of injuries, a lot of lack of performance. The end of the season last year, we did see him pitch pretty well in AAA. And so you kind of got an idea of what could be in the future. But you got to remember, this dude was drafted in 2017.
16.
I mean, 16. Geez, I was giving him an extra year.
First round draft pick in 2016. I think he was 17th pick.
So you're talking about 8+ years ago. That so there's been a lot of trials and tribulations that have gone through this. He still got the high end fastball. Still has trouble staying healthy. So we'll just have to wait and see exactly what Dana Brown has in store for him, what they're looking to do. But it's unfortunate, but it just shows that just because you're a number one pick, just because you're one of the best pitching prospects to come out of high school that we've ever seen,
Mhm.
doesn't mean anything. You
I
got to
mean,
you got to stay healthy, and you got to get dudes out at the higher levels.
yeah, you look at it too, it's really remarkable when you think about the fact that you've got guys like that have passed him by all of this time. Like you look at
Mhm.
Renell Blanco, the guy that signed for nothing,
Right.
and came up and turned into a really good pitcher, both first
Sure.
as a reliever and then as a starter. And you look at Forrest Whitley, it is a very, very unpredictable sport. It is
So how old is Forrest? Forrest is
29.
27,
I'm
29.
29,
Okay.
I think. Let me make sure I'll double check that. But
Well,
I
he's in his upper 20s, whatever it is.
yes, and
Here's
I
what
think
you
that
hope for Forrest.
yeah,
Okay. And
he's
you see
27.
this.
My
Okay.
bad. 20, you're
27.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so he's right. He's right in his prime. And
He
here's
is.
what you hope for Forrest, whether it's with the Astros or just as a baseball fan, just, for his career. A lot of times we see these highly talented guys early in their professional careers have these issues with staying healthy.
Yeah.
They work out too much. They don't work out enough. They don't work out the correct way. They, are just accident prone, or,
Hmm.
they have bad luck, whatever it
Right.
is. A lot of times you see them, hopefully, that when they get into their late 20s, closer to 30, now all of a sudden they kind of figure things out. And if you remember when, Forrest, when he was drafted, he looked like he weighed about 140 pounds.
Right. He was a
Big,
skinny
tall,
dude.
skinny dude. He's still thin.
Yeah.
It's not like he's bulked up,
No.
but he's definitely filled out. And what you hope for him is that I don't think his career is over. I mean, you still look at the
No.
stuff. The stuff is still high end. It's just a matter of getting repeatable, making pitches when he needs to, and staying on the mound. But the Astros have, if they do end up cutting ties, I don't blame them for it. I mean,
Right.
it's been 8 years. They put a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of money in
Yeah.
Forrest Whitley, and it just simply hasn't come to fruition. Um,
Right.
you know, he may go to AAA because exactly what I'm saying, that he could turn it around and all of a sudden become a dude. Well, guess what? Dana Brown may be thinking the same thing.
It's a to me what's really interesting about the Forrest Whitley situation overall, besides the many years and the time and everything we've been all been waiting for him. What's really interesting to me is that because of his lack of service time, he doesn't really have much of a choice in his where he ends up going. I mean, I- if I think the biggest thing for the Astros, and this is just, and I think this is why it's a smart move by the organization, regardless of what you think about Forrest Whitley, is that they needed to free up a spot on the 40-man roster.
Right.
This was a team that from the beginning of the season had a lot of guys on their 40-man roster without options left.
Sure.
And that puts a team in a difficult situation, particularly when they have to deal with injuries. And we've seen them move a lot of guys up and down from the minors to the
Mhm.
majors and back and forth. There's basically a shuttle bus between Sugarland and
It's
Dyken
why it's
Park.
there. It's
Yeah,
why it's there.
exactly. It's like they get the mega bus happening
That's
out
it.
there,
That's it. Go party
and
bus.
exactly. And it's so they need the flexibility more than anything else.
Yeah.
Now, I don't because he has to go onto the 26-man roster. It is a question mark as to whether, I mean, maybe a team that's like, struggling, that's not very good, or maybe a team like, what if Detroit was on that list and you had a guy like AJ Hinch who's been in the system before,
Yeah.
and they have some issues right now in terms of pitching injuries. Those might be the kinds of places he could end up. But I'm with you. I think if he doesn't, I think he goes right back to Sugarland. I don't think the Astros are going to release him. I think they're
Yeah.
going to let him play out in Sugarland. I just think the main thing was they needed to get him off that 40-man roster so they could free up that space for
Sure.
them
Well,
to make play.
so this ends up being not just a lack of performance move, which, his last time
Yeah,
out, he did not have a good outing.
right.
He hasn't been great this season either.
No.
But, the thing that he's got going for him as far as staying inside the Astros organization is, well, if they let him go, what are they going to replace him with?
Right.
This is not a highly talented minor league system.
Mhm.
That's just I'm not trying to be mean.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of
That's
depth
just
there
true.
for sure.
And when you're a team that's been as good as the Astros have been for this long, yeah, your minor league talent goes downhill because you don't get those top draft picks.
Right.
You don't, you're moving players, minor league players, top minor league talent to get players for your big league team. I mean,
Yep.
this is the way business is done, and so every system ends up, falling by the wayside a little bit.
Mhm.
So, that may be, a silver lining for those of us that want the Astros to keep Forrest Whitley. We'll just have to wait and see. I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. So,
Yeah.
and to tell you the truth, I think there may be a situation that Dana Brown's actually still in between. Well, what do we want to do? Talking
Well,
to the guys, talking to, his scouts, talking to everybbe else in the front office, getting everybody on board to go one way or the other.
Well, and also if they can make a deal to move him and get something back, even if it's a lower minor league prospect, it might be worth their while to do that.
Yeah.
To be able to look, the name of the game for the Astros really is flexibility, just simply because they do have a weird balance between veterans and young players in
Hmm.
terms of service time. So they have a lot of guys on this 40-man roster who don't have a lot of options. And so this anytime you can open up some spots with some options to move guys back and forth, it's an advantage. So we'll
Yeah.
see what they do. I
I
will
will
say
make
that
a
yeah,
general statement here that
yeah.
usually when you trade somebody like this,
Mhm.
you don't trade an arm for an arm. You
No,
usually trade an arm for a position player,
I
and the
agree.
Astros could always use more offense because, as great as their pitching staff has been this year,
Yeah.
their offense has been. I think if we can say that they've been middle of the road, if they've been middle of the pack in Major League Baseball, I think we're being nice.
I think we are. And let's talk about that for a minute, actually, because the offense, look, May was good for the Astros.
Mhm.
They went from, I think it was 26th in OPS up to about 14th. You and I were talking before we started broadcasting, and you mentioned that they were something like in the 20s in terms of batting average. But the thing
No,
that
run scored. Yeah,
run
run
scored.
scored. I think
Thank
they
you.
were
Sorry.
22nd. Last I looked, they were 22nd in Major League Baseball in
Repeat
runs
that
scored.
stat for me that you said
Okay,
earlier that blew me
so
away.
one of the
It's
things that I've
crazy.
been harping on as far as the offense in this podcast and then back to the bullpen podcast is their lack of offense on a daily basis. Okay, they've scored. If you like I said, they're 22nd in the league in runs scored. But that can even be a little bit misleading. They have scored 3 runs or fewer in over half of their baseball games. It's like 35 games. So they're not even, that would be 70, not quite there yet. So over half their baseball games, they have scored 3 runs or fewer. Here's the crazy thing. Now they do have 12 wins in those
Yeah.
35 games, which is
Very
actually
good.
a good number. It's not a very good winning percentage, but
No, it's pretty
that's
good.
actually a good number, 12 wins.
Mhm.
Here's the crazy thing. In the games that they score 4 runs or more, their winning percentage is 800. Okay. They are 24-6 in games that they score a minimum of 4 runs. So, what's the equation? Figure out how to get that fourth run because you're going to win those baseball games. That shows how good the pitching staff is. I
It's
mean, they
so
have been
crazy.
outstanding. And not just the rotation, which has had its injuries yet
Mhm.
again.
Oh,
Last
yeah.
year had big injuries. This year you did the same thing. Uh, but it also shows how good the bullpen has been.
Well, listen, first of all, that is a stunning statistic to think they're 800 if they score 4 runs. I mean, it's
That's
just
a
a
huge number.
remarkable. It's
People need to understand that
that's
is a
just crazy.
huge number.
That is insane. But here's the thing that really interests me about this is that you're right. Their pitching has been great. The bullpen has been fantastic. They've
Mhm.
got and contributions from guys we may not have been expecting to provide those kinds of contributions early in the season. I mean, the back end we all have seen that
Yeah.
all along. But when you look at guys like Steven Okert, who's been absolutely spectacular with like one little blip.
Yeah, and they all
Taylor
had like a bad game or two, like
yeah,
all at the same
Caleb
time.
Caleb Ort had an explosion. Like
Right.
they all just blew
It
up
was
all
all in
over.
like 1 or 2 games.
And now they've got like 10 left-handers in the in the starting rotation and the
Well, and King
bullpen.
has been outstanding. He
Yeah,
had
Brian
one bad
King,
game just recently,
tremendous.
gave up like
Yeah.
4 or 5 earned runs. Other than that, it's been crickets. And
Yeah.
to tell you the truth, I think he may have be their most consistent reliever.
Yes, I think so too. And look, even the other day we saw Sean Dubin again. Dubin had a
Yeah.
bad game. He came back just like really, really good. What's been remarkable to me though is how they have managed to patch together a starting rotation that seems to come in and almost always gives a quality start or close to
Yeah.
it. I mean, Ryan Gusto's out there giving quality starts. There's this other kid that came up the other day whose name I can't even remember. Like it is the fact that they
Yeah.
are like they get guys in there and and it's been really remarkable how good this pitching staff has been overall, considering like how weird it's been with injuries.
And I think what you have to give credit to is you have to give credit to the Astros, not just their analytics department. Yes, that has something to do with it, but it's their player development.
Oh, for
That
sure.
when you go
Pitching, man.
down to Corpus and you go down to Sugarland, they're talking about pitching in the big leagues. They're talking about getting you mentally prepared to get called up and face the best hitters in the world.
Yeah.
And when they come up, you're not seeing these guys, deer in headlights. These guys
Right.
are going out and trying to executing game plans. They got an idea what they're trying to do. They know exactly what their strong suits are.
Right.
And, I've always said, and the Astros are notorious for this. When they face pitchers that they don't have a track record against, God forbid it be the first time he's ever pitched in the big leagues. How many times have we seen those guys shove against the Astros? Happens all the time.
Right.
Okay. And the reason is because veteran hitters just simply don't. You can look all the video you want. It's not the same as being in the box. And if a
Right.
young pitcher can throw strikes, especially early in the count, you absolutely have the advantage because veteran big league hitters, they don't have a track record against you.
Right.
If you can, by the third at bat in the game for Jose Altuve, if you can, if you can keep that pitch count down to 6 or 7 or 8, which Jose's swinging, that just bodes well for you because he may be 0 for 2 and 0-2 in his third at bat before he realizes what the release point is.
Yeah.
So throwing strikes is huge. I know it's overly simplistic, but in some cases that's really what's happened. But this player development for the Astros is legit. I mean, they have done a really nice job, especially in the pitching department, of when these guys come up from minor leagues, they're ready to pitch, and they're not, they're mentally prepared to pitch. We know they're physically talented enough to do it,
Sure.
but they're able to lock in and deal with all the distractions and deal with all the emotions and execute pitches.
The thing this is something the Astros have been known for now for this quote golden era of the Astros. Every time a pitcher shows up in Astroland, they suddenly get better. I mean, it is just, and some of it is analytics, and some of it is their pitching staff, some of it is their development staff. But one of the things that I think has been really interesting about the Astros as an organization is they seem to have a knack for picking their type of pitcher, right? They seem to look at a guy and say, okay, I see in this guy X. Something that other franchises don't always seem to get. Like they seem to be just a little bit ahead of other organizations in terms of seeing a guy and going, you know what, this guy has legitimate stuff that we can work with. And you see that what they do is they go in and they tell guys, and I think also, like you said, throw strikes. That's something that pitchers, I mean, listen, I never had pitch because nobody wanted me throwing anything. I could swing a little bit, but I can don't ask me to throw the ball. But I will tell you this: it's shocking to me whenever you see people pitch. If I were doing it, I would be scared to throw strikes. I wouldn't want to throw it down the middle because
Well,
the confidence that it takes to say, I'm going to throw my best pitch. I'm going to throw it in the zone
yeah.
because I feel like I can beat this guy, or I feel like at least I can get a good outcome out of it.
And that comes from maturity of pitchers,
Hmm.
regardless of what your age is.
Right.
It's not necessarily age really has nothing to do with it. And what you have to be able to do is, and one of the things that I talk to pitchers about all the time
Hmm.
is at least, I would rather throw a fastball 0-0 than 2-0. At least. So if you can get ahead in the count, you just have a better chance. If somebody wants
Right.
to swing on the first pitch, by all means, let them swing because usually the batting average against, other than Jose Altuve when he puts a ball in play,
Right.
um, is is very low. So go ahead and let them swing, especially if maybe you're throwing an off speed pitch or something like that. But Leo
Right.
Mazzoni used to do something to us when we back in the early '90s. This is you got to remember this is back before analytics department.
Sure.
Computers were being used. Some
Hmm.
video was being used. When I say sparingly, almost not at all. The only one that was using video was Tony Gwynn.
Hmm.
But he used to come up with a stat, and somebody would have to go. I don't think Leo did it, but he had somebody go through every outing of every pitcher and he would come up with a batting average against first pitch strikes, not first pitch ball in play. You see Jose
Yeah.
Altuve. He's batting 370 on first pitch ball in play.
Right.
Okay, but if you take that pitch and and you take a strike,
Hmm.
that's considered an 0 for 1. And when you go against first pitch strikes, everybody was under 200. So by
Wow.
all means, if throw the first pitch strike and let the dude, if he wants to swing at him, let him swing at
Yeah, the getting ahead in counts is something that I to be honest with you, I don't think it's a stat that's talked about enough.
it. Yeah.
I think if you watch a lot of games and you focus on it, you see that it's important and you understand. I remember we were talking about this a couple of years ago with Jose Abreu. It seemed
Hmm.
like he did not get. He was always in an 0-2 count.
Right.
It seemed like he was always in the hole when it came to that, and as a result, his batting average suffered. I mean, there were
Oh,
other issues
of
there
course.
too,
Yeah.
but the ability to get ahead or ahead in the count, whether you're the pitcher or the batter, is I think it's an under talked about statistic,
Yeah.
and I think it's
Well,
something that
I
too many
have a
people.
little different with the pitchers that I work with.
Mhm.
I have a little different view. Now, I'm not saying I don't want my pitcher to throw the first pitch in the strike zone.
Mhm.
Okay. But I view it, I don't think a pitcher is truly behind in the count until he gets to 2-0. Okay. Now you're in a hole. But just because you go ball one doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily mean, you're behind in the count. So what I really need from my pitchers is I need one of the first two pitches in the strike zone.
Right.
I can get to 1-1. Okay, now I'm ready to go to work. Um, and a lot of times where you get in trouble is pitch selection. You throw a first pitch breaking ball for a ball. Now everybody on the planet, especially with younger pitchers, everybody on the planet knows a fastball is coming.
Right.
That's what you're trying to stay away from. But if I can get one of the first two pitches in the strike zone and get to 1-1, at least 1-1,
Right.
now I'm in the count and I'm ready. I'm ready to go to work.
Yeah, I think, and I think that makes a tremendous amount of sense, and I'm sure for the batters it's the same deal. You're trying to avoid getting the whole. You don't want two strikes on you no matter what.
Right.
Um, I think that it's a fascinating thing to watch. It is one part of strategy of baseball that I really do appreciate. I'm not the old school guy who cares that much about the DH and the strategy and the
Right.
ending, but the pitch to pitch stuff I find really fascinating because just watching going, okay, if this guy gets a strike here, that means X has to happen.
Yeah.
There's so many little variables that happen throughout a count. And I will say this, something else that has really been helping the pitching is how good the Astros defense has been.
Yeah.
And look, from a defensive standpoint, last year the Astros were not very good defensively. It was a strange, anomalous year
Hmm.
because the Astros traditionally have been very good defensively. They have the athletes to be good defensively, but they just did not put in a very a very quality year defensively. This year, however, look, Jacob Melton is legit defensively in the
Dude can go
outfield.
get it. No
If
doubt.
if your lineup in the outfield was Cam Smith and Jacob Melton on the corners with Jake Myers in the center, that might be one of the better outfields in the American League defensively. Already you've got Cam Smith is second in the majors in outs above average in the outfield. I mean, I think Tatis is the only one that's above him. And I mean, you're talking about some serious defense in the outfield. And then of course you're still turning great plays in the infield. And look, let's be fair. Moving Jose Altuve out of second base has been a benefit for the Astros. If you put Dubon in there or you put Brendan Rodgers in there, they are better at second base, period.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And does that mean Jose can't play second?
No.
No, not at all. Even last year, I just think Jose. There were times when Jose got, and I hate to say it this way, got a little lazy. Maybe it was mentally lazy, maybe not physically lazy. But how many times did we see him? And it didn't happen like all the time, but a lot of times his errors were on routine ground balls.
Yep.
And that's a concentration issue. That's not necessarily a physical error. That was more of a mental error that led to a physical error. But you've been seeing that from Jose, build over the years. So I agree. I think that, moving Jose wasn't a bad situation. And listen, Jose has not been bad in left field either.
No.
I always thought everybody's, he's not going to be able to do it. Why would he not be able to do it? He's a freaking athlete. He can fly. He's got plenty of arm to play left field.
Yes, he does.
Now, are there going to be some hiccups as far as routes? Maybe not.
Sure.
I mean, we saw the same thing in right with Cam, that especially early.
Yep.
Yeah, there were some issues with his routes, but that's okay. That's going to get better with repetition. But they're athletes.
Right.
And anytime you move an athlete further away from home plate, the situation is just easier. The position is just easier.
And I think too, look, maybe I don't know if the Astros intended this, and they probably did because they're probably playing chess and I'm playing checkers. But I will say that moving him to left field strategically has been the right move too, because they have been able to then play him some at second. They play him some in left. They DH him occasionally, especially now with Jordan still on the shelf. It has been strategically a good move for them.
And I think what we've seen, go ahead and finish.
No, I was just going to say, it just gives them flexibility.
Well, and I think what it does for Jose, it keeps him fresh.
Yeah.
Okay. True. And because I think that's what has happened to him defensively is he's just gotten mentally stale, playing second base every day. Not saying that he's taking it for granted or anything like that, but, dude's been playing, manning the second base spot for the last 10 years. And so you can understand that, let's try something a little bit new. Now, the way it all turned out, with, I'll move to left. If you want to move Bregman to second, I don't know how much truth was to that. I know Jose said that. But that opened the door for the Astros to be able to go, okay, well, let's see what you look like in left field. And they didn't get Bregman, but that's a story for another time.
Well, and speaking of that, let's not discount it all. First of all, Christian Walker is a stellar first baseman, period. He's absolutely spectacular first baseman.
Yeah.
Defensively tremendous. And man, Isaac Paredes has been better than advertised at third base. I mean, is he Alex Bregman? No. But he has been
doesn't have quite the range. Yeah.
No, doesn't have quite the range. But man, and he is accurate with his throws. He really does have kind of a rocket for an arm, frankly, considering some of the throws he's made. But he is a very, very serviceable third baseman. He is not the huge dip defensively that I think a lot of people feared he might be. And he certainly is better offensively this year than Alex Bregman, who's out hurt right now. And then certainly better than Alex Bregman was last season.
Sure.
And so they've certainly upgraded, I think, both defensively and to some degree offensively if Christian Walker ever gets it going.
Yeah, and that's going to be a question with first base. They call it
just curse.
I was going just about to say the Yuli curse.
Right.
But listen, we
Do
see
we need a
this. We
we
see
need a
this.
live chicken?
Right. Should have got the live chicken.
That's right.
So, I mean, I think what really is happening is he got off to a tough start. Okay. It snowballed. And now the sample size, I mean,
Yeah.
if he went on a 10 or 12 game hitting streak, the
Yep.
batting average would barely move because he's got so many at bats now.
Mhm.
I think what he needs to do now is just try and have some quality at bats, because why are
Right.
you there? You're not there to carry a high batting average. You're there to
No.
hit some home runs. You're there to drive in runs. So when you get those opportunities, let's really work hard. But this is one of those things. Oh, it's another bad signing for the. No, it wasn't a bad signing because
No.
defensively, I mean,
Oh,
he's as
he's a
good as
plus
anybody,
defender. Yeah.
and then offensively, he's going to swing the bat better, and he's actually
Yeah.
swung the bat better than he has.
He
He
has.
just got off that first month of the season, and why? Maybe living up to the contract, which there's no such
Maybe.
thing. Maybe he changed leagues, which that's something I talk about all the
Yes.
time.
You have talked
That
about
people
that.
just do not understand the difference. Yeah, it's still the big leagues, but it's different. Different hitting eyes,
Right.
different pitching staffs. Um, Moving to a different city,
Mhm.
everything you don't know
Different
what's going
different
on off
building.
the field. All these guys are, so there's so many different aspects that would have to come into play to see exactly what was going on. But I think more than anything else, it might be just pressing, just
I think
trying
so
to do
too.
too much.
Well, and also listen, the effect that of not having Jordan Alvarez in the lineup cannot be discounted either because,
True.
with him in there, it just takes some of the pressure off.
Well,
Maybe
even though when he was in there, he wasn't doing anything either.
well,
But
no,
it
that's
looks like this
right.
hand issue, goes back to, oh gosh, easy spring training, maybe even
Yeah.
before that.
Yeah, maybe even winter. All right, last thing before we go, and I had to hit this. I forgot to mention this too before we started. Robo umps are coming,
Yeah.
and we heard this. And listen, I am I have such mixed feelings about things in general, about the world in general,
Yeah.
but I have no mixed feelings about RoboUps. I am perfectly satisfied to have them, not because I think that the ABS system is the solution and they should just get rid of the
Right.
umpire, any of that, but because the other day, like everybody, I follow Umpire Auditor and I watch the videos that they show. I think it was Laz Diaz. It might have been. I mean, he would be the perfect candidate for this. Someone called a strike on a pitch that was 6 inches outside the strike zone.
Yeah.
6, and it's
That's a
like
big number. Now,
that.
that used to happen a lot.
Right,
You go
of
back to
course.
the 90s, that used to happen, but they were more consistent with it.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
now it's like you miss
Hirschbeck
one.
was always big outside corner, miss the ball
Right,
underneath your plate. I knew it as a pitcher. You knew it as a hitter. Okay, we deal with this.
right.
Okay, but once they started messing with the umpire, start. Well, you need to call it here, and you need to call. The problem is there's human error, and you don't see
Yep.
you one pitcher may have one. I'm sorry, one umpire may have it as a strike, another umpire might have it as a ball,
Right.
and that's the human error. Kicking and screaming, I've come to the conclusion that it's going to make the game better. Okay. Will there still be issues? Of course, there's always
Oh,
going to be issues. But
absolutely.
but yeah, there's been some egregious calls that you're just like, come on, man. There's no, and just like we were talking about Jose Altuve, and maybe it's a lack of concentration. And listen, being an umpire, calling, behind home plate, not knowing what the pitch is, these guys throwing high velocity. I don't want to say it's an easy job,
No.
but one lapse of concentration and you either miss a call good, or you miss a call in the zone, or miss a call out of the zone, and that can be the difference between a game. And we just, with the technology of where we are in the world today, there's no reason to have that.
That's the thing. The technology is it, right? Like to me, the biggest thing
And
is
people need to understand, we have been going through this. This
right,
this is not something that we've just come up with over the last 2 or 3 years.
right.
They've been working on this. Oh heck, it
Oh,
goes all the way back to the early 2000s, maybe
oh yeah.
earlier than that.
Right. Right. And here's the thing. From a technological standpoint, as someone who had, grew up as a nerd, continues to be a nerd, I can tell you that the one thing that is difficult for people to come to grips with, it's difficult to come to grips with. First of all, technology has changed how we watch the game. right? That's the first thing.
Absolutely.
The strike zone on the screen has completely
They
altered
need to
our
get rid of that.
perception.
They need to get rid
Yeah,
of that.
I know. Well, they're never
Yes.
getting rid of that, and you know it as well as I do. It ain't ever happening. That
Well,
strike zone
because
is
to
there.
start off with, and oh, you're going
It's
to get
not
me on
always
it.
right.
You're going to get me on a tangent here.
Yeah, I know.
Does the strike zone move? No,
Right.
it doesn't.
No.
Whether Altuve is up or
Right.
Judge is up, you put the same rectangle up there. And those dudes do not have the same strike zone.
No, apparently Apple's does. Apparently, when it's the Apple Live
Whatever.
TV,
I
their
haven't
strike
seen
zone,
an Apple broadcast because the broadcasts are
it's bad.
brutal.
It's bad. But they apparently theirs does. But yeah, that's one of the things they're talking about also is with the ABS syncing the box on the screen to the where the ABS, which is supposed to move around based on the player. Never mind whether it does or not. It has fundamentally altered our perception of how people see the game because of
Sure.
the technology that we have. Look, being able to see the curve of the flight of the
Yeah.
ball, being able to all of those things, all of that stuff has changed our perception of how we see baseball. So we have to bend to a certain degree in order to bend to that perception so that we can at
Yeah.
least make so that we don't end up in some crazy well of conspiracies about how somebody does what or whatever. It's just human error. Let's fix it when we can.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. In this industry, we all, and I'm talking about all of us, fans, players,
Mm-hmm.
organizations, the only way we nobody likes change.
No.
So there's the only way to change it. It's kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
But we've been talking about this for the better part of a decade right now.
Yes.
And so this has been development. And the automated strike zone, I mean, it's gone through many companies. It's gone through many revisements.
Yeah.
Is there still, you talk to minor leaguers, you talk to guys in AAA, are
Mhm.
there still pitches that go, man, that's just, it missed this or
Sure.
it called that? Okay. There's always, technology is not perfect either.
No.
So, but I mean, we've seen, whether it's, what is it, umpire scorecard, and you see
Yeah.
some of the calls, you're like, gosh, dang it, man.
Yeah. I tell you,
Consistently missing in one spot or even worse, missing all over the place.
well, it made I will say this. I don't know how many people listening or watching have watched much tennis. I watch a little bit of the majors.
Mhm.
Years ago, I kind of started watching Wimbledon. I just found it interesting. The ABS system, their version of it,
Yeah.
that tracks balls that hit the line or don't hit the line, has been a major change in
Yeah.
tennis for the better.
And that is an easier system.
Sure,
Okay,
absolutely.
because the lines are straight.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
It doesn't move around.
the camera doesn't move. Yes, the
Right.
ball's coming with velocity, but it's a little bit different. It's not
Sure.
3-dimensional. It's only 2-dimensional.
Right. That's exactly right.
Ours is a little bit
Way
different,
more
but they've
complicated.
been doing it in tennis for decades. I
Yeah.
mean, we've been watching that for a long time, and this
And
is just an offshoot of that technology.
hey, if all it does is just clear out a little of the riffraff, if that's
Yeah,
all it does, if you just take some of the guys who are like, why are you calling that a strike every single time when that is clearly not a strike? If
right.
that's all it does, to me, then it's worth it. And
Yeah,
it's not going to be every pitch. That's the main thing.
yeah.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Really appreciate it. Always, we will be back next week for another one of these, and perhaps we will rant again about RoboUmps. Perhaps not. Who knows? You can
We'll
us
find
on-
another subject to rant about.
Exactly. You can find us on social media at Bleav in Astros, at Mike Stanton 29, at Jeff Balke. Thanks so much for joining us. We will see you next time, and as always, go Astros.
Adios.